Story 1. I never thought my wedding day would become the stuff of internet legends, but here we are. Let me tell you about how an entitled mom nearly ruined what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and how sweet justice was served. My now spouse and I had been together for 5 years before we decided to tie the knot. We're both pretty low-key people who hate extravagance and unnecessary spending. The thought of blowing tens of thousands of dollars on a single day made us both break out in hives, so we decided on a small, intimate ceremony at Willow Creek Park. This beautiful little spot near our apartment with a gazebo overlooking a pond. We did everything by the book. 3 months before our wedding date, we went to the city office and applied for a park usage permit. We paid the $250 fee, got all the paperwork stamped and approved, and even checked with the park ranger about any restrictions. The ranger was super nice and told us that as long as we kept the guest count under 50 and didn't serve alcohol before 5 p.m., we were golden. We planned for a 4 p.m. ceremony followed by a small reception right there in the park. Nothing fancy, just some folding tables, chairs, a small sound system for our first dance, and of course, our wedding cake. My cousin is a professional baker and gifted us the most beautiful 2-tier cake as her wedding present. It wasn't massive, but it was perfect for us, white buttercream frosting with little fondant wildflowers that matched the actual wildflowers my spouse would be carrying. The big day arrived, and everything was going according to plan. The weather was perfect, 75 degrees and sunny with a light breeze. Our best friend had gotten ordained online and would be officiating. My parents had flown in from out of state. My spouse's elderly grandparents had made the 3-hour drive to be there. All 42 of our guests were seated in the white folding chairs we'd rented, facing the gazebo where we would say our vows. I was hiding behind a large oak tree, waiting for our wedding playlist to hit, at last, by Etta James. Our cue to walk down the makeshift aisle together. My spouse was on the other side of the gathering, also waiting. Our coordinator, actually just my college roommate, who's really organized, gave us both the thumbs up. The music started, and I stepped out from behind the tree. That's when I heard it. A shrill voice cutting through Etta's smooth vocals. "Excuse me, what is all this? Who authorized this?" I turned toward the commotion and saw her, a woman in her mid-40s with that iconic haircut that just screams, "I want to speak to the manager." She was dragging a confused-looking boy of about 8 or 9 by the hand, with 3 other adults trailing behind her, carrying party supplies. I froze, unsure what to do. Our coordinator rushed over to the woman while my spouse joined me, both of us watching in confusion. "Coordinator, hi there. We're in the middle of a wedding ceremony. Is there something I can help you with?" The woman's face contorted into an expression of pure outrage. She looked like someone had just told her that her favorite reality TV show was canceled. "Woman, a wedding? Are you kidding me? I reserved this entire area weeks ago for my son's birthday party. Look at him, he's turning 9 today. You need to pack up and leave right now." My spouse squeezed my hand and whispered, "Let me handle this." As a lawyer who specializes in civil disputes, they deal with difficult people on a daily basis. "Spouse? Ma'am, I'm sorry for any confusion, but we have a permit for this space today from 3 p.m. until 8 p.m. We'd be happy to show you the documentation." The woman scoffed so hard I thought she might pull a muscle in her face. "Woman, I don't need to see your documentation. I called the park office and told them we needed this space. My son has been looking forward to this for months. Do you really want to ruin a child's birthday?" She thrust her son forward like he was exhibit A in a courtroom drama. The poor kid looked mortified, staring at the ground and mumbling something about just wanting to go to the arcade instead. My spouse maintained that calm, professional demeanor that I've always admired. "Spouse, I understand your frustration, but we've had this booked for 3 months and have the proper permits. The park is large enough that perhaps you could set up your party in another section. We'll be done with the ceremony in about 30 minutes. For a brief, shining moment, I thought reason might prevail. The woman seemed to consider this, looking around at the park. Then her gaze landed on our reception area, where the cake sat on a table decorated with flowers and photos of us throughout our relationship. Woman, fine. We'll just set up over there then. Before anyone could stop her, she marched over to our reception area, her entourage reluctantly following. Our guests were all watching now, the ceremony completely forgotten. My elderly father-in-law tried to stand up to intervene, but my mother-in-law pulled him back down, whispering something about not wanting him to throw out his back again. The woman reached the tables and began shoving our decorations aside to make room for her son's birthday supplies. Coordinator, ma'am, please stop. That's private property. Woman, it's a public park. Nothing here is private. That's when she reached the cake table. My cousin, who had spent hours crafting that beautiful cake, rushed forward. Cousin, don't touch that cake. I worked for 3 days on it. The woman looked my cousin dead in the eyes and said something I still can't believe. Woman, my son is allergic to fondant anyway. This cake is a health hazard in a public space. Then she did it. She placed both hands on the edge of the table and flipped it over. The cake seemed to fall in slow motion, hitting the grass with a sickening thud. The top tier separated from the bottom, rolling a few feet away before coming to rest against a chair leg. The collective gasp from our guests was so loud it startled birds from a nearby tree. My cousin burst into tears. My spouse's face went from patient negotiator to stone-cold fury in an instant. The woman looked almost surprised at her own actions for a split second before doubling down. Woman, oops. Well, now you don't need to worry about my son's allergies. You should thank me. That was the moment my spouse pulled out their phone and dialed 911, speaking clearly and calmly. Spouse, yes, I'd like to report destruction of property and disruption of a permitted event at Willow Creek Park. We have an individual who has flipped over tables, destroyed a wedding cake, and is refusing to leave our permitted area. The woman's eyes widened as she realized someone was actually calling the authorities. Her son started crying, telling her he just wanted to go home. Woman, are you calling the police? Over a cake? Do you know who my husband is? He's friends with the mayor. Spouse, I'm sure the responding officers will be very interested to hear about your connections. For the next 20 excruciating minutes, we all waited. Our guest remained seated, unsure what to do. The woman's friends had the good sense to look embarrassed, and one of them tried to convince her to leave before the police arrived, but she refused. Woman, no, I'm not going anywhere. We have just as much right to be here as they do. More, even, because my son is a child, and this is a public park designed for children. Finally, 2 police officers arrived. They took statements from multiple people, including the woman who was now insisting that we had actually crashed her event and that she was the victim. Officer, ma'am, I need to see your permit for using this section of the park today. Woman, I don't need a permit. It's a public park. These people are the ones who need to show permits. The officer turned to us, and my spouse handed over our neatly filed paperwork, complete with receipt and approval stamp. After reviewing it, the officer turned back to the woman. Officer, ma'am, for gatherings of more than 10 people, the city requires a usage permit. Do you have one? Woman, I told the person on the phone we were coming. That's the same thing. Officer, no, ma'am, it's not. Did you fill out any paperwork or pay a reservation fee? The woman's face flushed red. Woman, why would I pay to use a public park that my tax dollars already pay for? The second officer had been taking photos of the destroyed cake and flipped table while his partner questioned the woman. He rejoined them and showed something on his phone to the first officer. Officer, ma'am, I'm issuing you a citation for destruction of private property and disturbing the peace. The damage to the wedding cake and rentals is estimated at over $500, which makes this a misdemeanor offense. Additionally, according to park regulations, you're banned from using this park for any organized gatherings for the next 12 months. The woman's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Then she exploded. Woman, this is ridiculous. Do you know who I am? I'll have your badge. My husband plays golf with the police chief. Officer, ma'am, please lower your voice. You can contest the citation in court if you wish. Here's your paperwork. You need to leave the premises now, or we'll add trespassing to the charges. Her son was full on sobbing now, and one of her friends finally spoke up. Friend, come on, let's just go. We can have the party at Chuck E. Cheese like he wanted in the first place. The look the woman gave her friend could have curdled milk. But finally, she snatched the citation from the officer, grabbed her son's hand, and stormed off, her friends hurriedly grabbing their party supplies and following. As they left, we could hear her ranting about how she would sue everyone, including the city, the police department, and especially us. Once they were gone, a strange silence fell over our gathering. The officers helped us right the overturned table and offered to file a full report for insurance purposes. They also said that if she contacted or harassed us again, we should call them immediately. After the police left, my spouse and I looked at each other, then at our guests, then at the sad remains of our beautiful wedding cake splattered across the grass. I don't know who started laughing first. Maybe it was me, maybe it was my spouse, or maybe it was my tipsy uncle in the back row, but suddenly everyone was laughing. The tension broke, and my cousin came up to us with tears still in her eyes, but a smile on her face. Cousin, the bottom tier might still be salvageable, and I have some emergency cupcakes in my car that I brought just in case something happened to the cake during transport. Our coordinator quickly reorganized everything while our guests helped clean up the mess. Someone put the music back on, and 30 minutes later than scheduled, my spouse and I finally had our ceremony. We said our vows with grass stains on our nice clothes and the taste of laughter still in our mouths. During the reception, my spouse surprised me by presenting a small piece of the salvaged cake. Spouse, I saved this for us. No entitled parent can take away our moment. We fed each other bites of squished cake while our guests cheered. 2 weeks later, we received notice that the woman was contesting her citation. My spouse eagerly volunteered to represent the city pro bono for the hearing. Apparently, the judge was not impressed by her claims that she was the victim of discrimination against families with children. She ended up having to pay the full fine plus court costs. As a wedding gift, our friends pooled money to pay for the professional photographer to Photoshop out the cake disaster from our wedding photos. But honestly, we kept one unedited picture in our album. Whenever we're having a bad day, we look at the photo of the entitled mom being escorted away by police while we're kissing in the background, and it makes us smile. Sometimes I wonder if that poor kid ever got his Chuck E. Cheese party. I hope so, and I hope his mom learned something that day, though somehow I doubt it. Story 2. I've been working at Prime Cut Steakhouse for about 5 years now. It's one of those fancy places where people come to celebrate special occasions, and where a single steak can cost more than I make in half a day. I started as a busboy, worked my way up to server, and now I'm the assistant manager. The pay is decent, and most of the customers are nice, even if they can be a bit snooty sometimes. Last Saturday was one of our busiest nights. Every table was booked, and we had a waiting list a mile long. I was helping out on the floor because we were short-staffed, and that's when I first noticed her. She walked in like she owned the place designer purse swinging from her arm, sunglasses perched on her head despite it being 8 p.m., and a scowl that could curdle milk. Behind her trailed a man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else and 2 teenagers who were glued to their phones. Our host approached them with a smile. "Host, good evening. Do you have a reservation with us tonight?" The woman clicked her tongue in annoyance. "Woman, no, but you'll seat us right away. It's my husband's birthday." The man behind her winced slightly, but said nothing. "Host, I'm so sorry, but we're fully booked this evening. The wait time is currently about an hour and a half." The woman's face turned a shade redder. "Woman, do you know who I am? We're regulars here. Get us a table now." I had never seen this woman before in my life, and I work here almost every day. I decided to step in before things escalated. "Excuse me, I'm the assistant manager. Is there a problem? Woman. Yes, there's a problem. We're here to celebrate. And this person is telling us we have to wait. That's unacceptable. Me. I understand it's a special occasion, but unfortunately, we're completely booked tonight. I'd be happy to put your name on our waiting list, or I could call our sister restaurant downtown to see if they have availability. Woman. We're not going anywhere else. We want to eat here. Now. Her husband finally spoke up, his voice soft and apologetic. Husband. Honey, maybe we should try somewhere else. Woman. No, they need to accommodate us. It's your birthday. I was about to suggest they have a drink at the bar while waiting when a four-top table paid their bill and left. It wasn't in our best section, it was near the kitchen, but it was available. Me. You know what? A table just opened up. If you don't mind being seated near the kitchen, we can accommodate you right away. The woman looked like she was about to argue about the location, but then smiled smugly. Woman, that's more like it. See? Was that so hard? As I led them to their table, the woman made a show of examining everything, from the tablecloth to the silverware, looking for flaws. Her husband and kids sat down quietly, clearly used to this behavior. Me, your server will be with you shortly. I assigned one of our best servers to their table, a young woman who had been with us for 3 years and knew how to handle difficult customers. I warned her this group might be challenging, and she nodded, unfazed. She had dealt with plenty of entitled people before. From my position at the host stand, I could see their table. The server approached with a friendly smile. Server, good evening. Welcome to Prime Cut Steakhouse. My name is... Woman, we don't need the speech. Bring us some water and take our order. Server, of course. Would you like to hear about our specials this evening? Woman, fine, whatever. Be quick about it. The server professionally described our chef's specials, and then the family ordered. The husband and kids ordered reasonable items, a ribeye, a filet mignon, and a chicken dish for one of the teenagers. But the woman, she pointed straight to the most expensive item on our menu. Woman, I'll have the Wagyu tomahawk with the truffle butter, and make sure it's medium rare. Not medium, not rare, medium rare. The Wagyu tomahawk was $175. It was a massive, premium cut that even our wealthier regulars ordered sparingly. The server took their menus and left to put in their orders. I went back to my duties, checking on other tables and helping where needed. About 20 minutes later, I noticed the woman waving her hand aggressively, trying to get someone's attention. Server, is everything all right with your appetizers? Woman, the calamari is rubbery, and the lobster bisque is cold. I happen to know that both items had just come out of the kitchen moments ago. The bisque especially was always served piping hot, but the server handled it gracefully. Server, I'm so sorry to hear that. Let me take those back and get you fresh ones right away. Woman, don't bother. Just bring our main courses faster. The server nodded and walked away. I could see her take a deep breath as soon as her back was turned. When their main courses arrived, the presentation was impeccable, as always. The chef had taken extra care with the Wagyu tomahawk, knowing it was our premium dish. It was perfectly cooked, with a beautiful sear on the outside and a rosy medium rare center, exactly as ordered. I watched as the woman cut into her steak. Her face gave nothing away as she took her first bite, then her second, and her third. In fact, she proceeded to demolish the entire massive steak, along with all the sides. Her plate was practically licked clean by the end. Her family seemed to enjoy their meals as well, with no complaints. Just when I thought we might have escaped disaster, I saw the woman gesturing for the server again, this time more aggressively. Server, how is everything? Can I interest you in our dessert menu? Woman, the steak was completely undercooked. I couldn't even eat it. The server looked confused, glancing at the empty plate. Server, I'm sorry to hear that. It looks like you finished it, though. Woman, I had to pick around the edges. The middle was raw. I want a full refund. Server, I apologize for the inconvenience. Let me get my manager for you. The server found me and explained the situation. I sighed, already knowing where this was heading. I've seen this scam before. People eat their entire meal, then claim it was terrible and demand their money back. But this was particularly brazen. I approached the table with a professional smile. Me, good evening. I understand there was an issue with your steak. Woman, yes, it was completely raw in the middle. I couldn't eat it. I want a full refund, and I want our entire meal comped. Me, I'm sorry to hear that. However, I noticed that the plate is empty. If there was an issue with the steak, it would have been better to let us know right away so we could fix it for you. Woman, are you calling me a liar? Me, not at all. I'm just trying to understand the situation. If the steak was undercooked, we would have been happy to cook it more for you. Woman, well, I ate what I could, but it's made me sick. I can feel it. I'm going to be violently ill soon, and it will be your fault. Her husband looked mortified, staring down at the table. The teenagers had finally looked up from their phones, sensing drama. Me, I understand your concern, but I'm afraid I can't issue a refund for a meal that was consumed entirely. Woman, get me your manager. Me, I am the manager on duty tonight. That's when she really lost it. Her face turned purple with rage. Woman, this is unacceptable. I spend thousands of dollars here every month. That was definitely a lie. Like I said, I'd never seen her before. Woman, I demand to speak to the owner right now. Me, the owner isn't here tonight, and... She stood up suddenly, knocking her chair backward. Then, with a dramatic sweep of her arm, she knocked over a tray of drinks that a server was carrying to a nearby table. Glass shattered, liquid splashed everywhere, and several customers gasped. Woman, look what you made me do. The server who had been carrying the tray jumped back, narrowly avoiding the broken glass. I immediately went to help them, making sure they weren't hurt. Me, are you okay? Server, yeah, I'm fine. I turned back to the woman, who was now standing with her arms crossed, a smug look on her face. Me, ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Woman, I'm not going anywhere until I get my refund. By this point, her husband had stood up, his face ashen. Husband, please, let's just go. I'll pay the bill. Woman, no, they served us raw meat. I'm calling the police. And to my astonishment, she pulled out her phone and actually dialed 911. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Woman, yes, hello. I need police assistance at Prime Cut Steakhouse immediately. They've served me dangerous, undercooked meat and are refusing to refund me. I fear for my safety. She hung up with a triumphant look. Woman, the police will sort this out. They'll arrest you for food poisoning. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Me, ma'am, food poisoning isn't immediate. It takes hours, sometimes days, to develop, and it's not a criminal offense. Woman, don't you lecture me. I know my rights. I noticed several other customers were filming the scene with their phones. Great, we'd probably end up on social media. But at that moment, I was more concerned about de-escalating the situation. Me, sir, your bill comes to $347.82. Will you be paying by card or cash? The husband quickly handed me his credit card, avoiding his wife's glare. Woman, don't you dare pay them. Husband, please, just stop. You're embarrassing us. I processed the payment as quickly as possible and returned his card. The woman was still fuming, but at least the bill was settled. About 15 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. The woman immediately rushed over to them. Woman, officers, I'm so glad you're here. These people served me raw, tainted meat and refused to refund me. I want them arrested. The officers looked at me, and I explained the situation calmly. Then I mentioned our security cameras. Me, we have the entire incident on video, including her eating the entire steak and then claiming it was inedible. One of the officers turned to the woman. Officer, ma'am, did you eat the steak? Woman, only the edges that were cooked enough. Officer, and you're claiming it made you sick? Woman: Yes, I can feel it coming on. Officer: Food poisoning symptoms typically don't appear for several hours at minimum, often not until the next day. The woman's face faltered slightly. Officer: We'd like to see the security footage, please. I led one officer to our office to review the footage while the other stayed with the woman and her family. On our cameras, it was clear as day she had eaten every bite of her steak with enthusiasm, even closing her eyes at one point, seemingly in enjoyment. The footage also caught her deliberately knocking over the server's tray. When we returned, the officer addressed the woman. Officer: Ma'am, the footage clearly shows you consuming your entire meal without any signs of distress. It also shows you deliberately knocking over a server's tray. I'm issuing you a citation for disorderly conduct, and the restaurant has the right to press charges for the damage to their property. Woman: What? This is outrageous. I'll sue all of you. Officer: Ma'am, please lower your voice. You've already been cited for disorderly conduct. If you continue, we can add disturbing the peace. The woman fell silent, though her face was still contorted with rage. Officer: The restaurant has also informed me that you're now banned from all prime cut steakhouse locations nationwide. I hadn't actually said that yet, but it was a great idea. I nodded in agreement. Me: That's correct. We'll be adding your information to our system. The officers escorted the woman and her family out. Her husband looked like he wanted to apologize, but didn't dare speak in front of her. The teenagers slunk out, heads down, probably dying of embarrassment. After they left, I comped the meal for the table that had their drinks spilled on them and gave them vouchers for a free dinner on their next visit. I also gave the server who dealt with the entitled woman a bonus from my own pocket. She deserved it after that ordeal. The next day, I discovered that one of the videos taken by a customer had gone viral. It showed the woman screaming about her raw steak, knocking over the tray, and then being confronted by the police. The internet had dubbed her Tomahawk Karen, and people were sharing stories of similar scams they'd witnessed. Our restaurant actually saw an uptick in business the following week. People kept coming in and ordering the Wagyu tomahawk, joking that they promised to eat it only if it was properly cooked. Sometimes entitled people get exactly what they deserve: a hefty fine, public embarrassment, and a lifetime ban from their scamming grounds. As for me, I've added dealing with Tomahawk Karen to my resume under crisis management skills. It's certainly a story I'll be telling for years to come. Story 3. I've been working from home for the past 3 years as a freelance graphic designer. I love the flexibility, but sometimes I need to mail physical samples or promotional materials to potential clients. My neighborhood post office is always busy. Seriously, no matter what time of day I go, there's a line. But that's just life in the city, right? Last Tuesday, I had a particularly important package to send. I'd created custom brochures for a potential client who could really boost my income if they signed with me. They wanted physical samples on their desk by Thursday, which meant I needed to use overnight shipping. Of course, I'd finished the design work later than planned, typical me, so I was cutting it close. I arrived at the post office around noon, which I knew was prime lunch hour rush, but I didn't have a choice. The line was out the door, with about 15 people ahead of me. I sighed, pulled out my phone to check emails, and prepared for the wait. Everyone looked equally annoyed: the elderly man with a cane shifting his weight uncomfortably, the college kid with headphones bobbing his head to music, the tired-looking mother trying to keep her toddler entertained. We were all in this together. 20 minutes into my wait, I'd moved up about halfway through the line. There were still 7 people ahead of me, but I was making progress. That's when I heard the door swing open aggressively behind me, followed by the sharp clack of heels on the linoleum floor. The woman who entered was probably in her 50s, dressed in an expensive-looking blazer and pencil skirt. Her hair was perfectly styled in that "I want to speak to the manager" bob, complete with blonde highlights. She carried a small package wrapped in brown paper, clutching it like it contained state secrets. Instead of joining the back of the line like a normal person, she marched straight past everyone. At first, I thought maybe she was just checking her PO box or looking at shipping supplies. But no, she walked directly to the front of the line where a middle-aged man was currently being served. "Woman, excuse me, I need to send this package immediately. It's urgent." The man currently at the counter turned and gave her a confused look. Man at counter, there's a line, ma'am. We're all waiting. She made a dismissive gesture with her hand, as if swatting away an annoying fly. Woman, I understand that, but my situation is different. I have an extremely important meeting in 30 minutes, and this package absolutely must go out today. I'm sure everyone will understand. The postal worker behind the counter, who looked like she'd seen it all in her years of service, spoke up. Postal worker, ma'am, I'm currently helping this customer. You'll need to go to the back of the line like everyone else. The woman's face reddened. Woman, do you know who I am? I'm the regional director at Prestige Financial. I handle millions of dollars in transactions every day. I don't have time to wait in line with. She gestured vaguely at the rest of us. Woman, these people. A collective murmur of disbelief rippled through the line. The elderly man with the cane spoke up. Elderly man, we all have places to be. Young lady, that doesn't give you the right to cut in front of everyone. Woman, young lady, I'm hardly young, but I appreciate the compliment. Look, this will take 2 minutes. I just need to send this overnight. The mother with the toddler shook her head. Mother, that's not the point. We've all been waiting patiently. Some of us have been here for half an hour. The woman's nostrils flared as she scanned the line of people staring at her. Woman, fine. Who's the manager here? I want to speak to whoever's in charge. The postal worker sighed deeply. Postal worker, I'm the supervisor on duty, and I'm telling you that you need to go to the back of the line. Woman, this is ridiculous. I'm a taxpayer. I pay your salary. A guy in a business casual outfit who had been quietly waiting his turn decided to speak up. Business casual guy. Actually, the United States Postal Service is an independent agency. They don't receive tax dollars for operating expenses. They're funded by selling postage, products, and services. The woman shot him a death glare. Woman, no one asked you. The situation was getting tense, but honestly, it was also becoming the most interesting thing to happen at this post office in probably forever. Everyone was fully invested in this drama now. Woman, I'm not moving until someone helps me right now. You people don't understand how important this package is. College kid, what's in it? The cure for cancer. A few people chuckled, which only made the woman more furious. Woman, that's it. If you won't serve me, I'm calling the police. This is harassment. Elderly man, go ahead. I'm sure they'll rush right over to help you cut in line. She pulled out her phone, and honestly, we all thought she was bluffing. No one actually calls the police over something this ridiculous, right? Wrong. To our collective shock, she actually dialed 911. Not the non-emergency number, not the local precinct, but actual emergency services. We all watched in stunned silence as she put the phone to her ear. Woman. Yes. Hello? I need to report harassment at the Main Street Post Office. There's a group of people preventing me from mailing an urgent package, and the staff is refusing to help me. I feel threatened and unsafe. The business casual guy leaned over to me. Business casual guy, is this really happening right now? I nodded, too amazed to speak. The woman continued her call. Woman, no, there's no physical assault, but they're ganging up on me verbally. I'm a respected business executive being denied service. What do you mean, is it an emergency? Of course it's an emergency. My package has to go out today. She listened for a moment, her face growing increasingly red. Woman, don't tell me to use the non-emergency line. This is an emergency to me. Just send someone now. She hung up and shot us all a triumphant look. Woman, the police will be here shortly. We'll see who gets to mail their packages then. The postal worker looked genuinely concerned now. Postal worker, Ma'am, did you seriously just call 911 because you don't want to wait in line? Woman, I called 911 because I'm being harassed and discriminated against. You'll all be sorry when the officers arrive. Mother, you realize misusing emergency services is a crime, right? Woman, mind your own business. This is an emergency. We all went back to waiting in line. The original man at the counter finally finishing his transaction. The next person stepped up, and business continued as usual, except for the entitled woman who stood off to the side, tapping her foot impatiently and checking her watch every 30 seconds. About 10 minutes later, 2 police officers walked in. One was a tall man with a serious expression, and the other was a younger woman who surveyed the scene carefully. The entitled woman immediately rushed over to them. Woman, officers, thank you for coming so quickly. These people. The male officer held up his hand. Male officer, before you continue, ma'am, I need to understand the situation. You called 911 reporting harassment. Woman, yes, the staff here refused to serve me, and all these people started ganging up on me when I explained that my package is urgent. The female officer looked around at the orderly line. Female officer, so what exactly was the emergency that required 911? Woman, I told you, they wouldn't let me mail my package. I have an important meeting and she checked her watch 15 minutes now. The male officer's expression darkened. Male officer, ma'am, did you call emergency services because you didn't want to wait in line at the post office? Woman, no, I called because I was being harassed. The postal worker stepped forward. Postal worker, officers, this woman attempted to cut to the front of the line. When I asked her to wait her turn like everyone else, she demanded special treatment. When denied, she called 911. There was no harassment except from her. The elderly man with the cane nodded. Elderly man, that's exactly what happened. We all witnessed it. Several others murmured in agreement. The entitled woman looked around, apparently just now realizing she had no allies here. Woman, they're all lying. They've formed some kind of postal line cult against me. I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing out loud. Postal line cult? That was a new one. The female officer sighed deeply. Female officer, ma'am, I need to see your ID, please. Woman, what? Why? I'm the victim here. Male officer, you used emergency services for a non-emergency situation. That's a misuse of 911, which is punishable by law in this state. Woman, this is outrageous. Do you know who I am? Female officer, we'll find out from your ID, ma'am. Reluctantly, she handed over her driver's license. The female officer took down her information while the male officer explained the situation to her. Male officer, emergency services are for life-threatening situations. Not wanting to wait in line at the post office doesn't qualify. You'll be receiving a citation for misuse of emergency services, which carries a fine of up to $1,000. The woman's face went pale. Woman, $1,000? For calling the police? Female officer, for calling 911 unnecessarily, yes? And you should know that multiple calls like this can result in more serious consequences. The woman looked like she might faint. The postal worker stepped forward again. Postal worker, officers, I'd also like to inform this customer that she's no longer welcome at this branch. We'll be filing a formal complaint about her behavior. Woman, you can't ban me from the post office. It's a public service. Postal worker, actually, we can refuse service to anyone who creates a disturbance or threatens staff or customers. You've done both. The woman looked around wildly, apparently searching for someone, anyone, who might take her side. Finding no one, she grabbed her package and stomped toward the door. Woman, this is the worst service I've ever experienced. I'll be calling your regional manager and my lawyer. As she reached the door, the female officer called out. Female officer, ma'am, you'll need to wait a moment. I'm not finished writing your citation. With a look of absolute defeat, the woman stopped at the door. The rest of us tried not to openly gloat. but it was hard. The justice was just too satisfying. While the officers finished processing her citation, the line continued to move. When it was finally my turn, I handed over my package for overnight shipping, paid the fee, and got my receipt. As I walked out, I passed the woman still waiting by the door, her face a mixture of anger and embarrassment as the officer explained the citation to her. I later found out from a friend who works near the post office that the woman tried to come back the next day and was promptly turned away. Apparently, her extremely important package was just some documents she could have easily scanned and emailed. The best part? My client loved the brochures and signed a year-long contract. Sometimes justice and good business go hand in hand. I still use that post office regularly, and the story has become something of a legend among the regular customers and staff. Sometimes when the line is particularly long, someone will jokingly ask if anyone's called 911 yet. It always gets a laugh. As for the entitled woman, I've never seen her at that post office again. I guess she found somewhere else to harass postal workers, or maybe, just maybe, she learned her lesson about waiting in line like the rest of us mere mortals.